The Galactic Council chamber hummed with the soft vibrations of 1,000 different species breathing, clicking, and whispering in their native tongues. Ambassador Sarah Chun sat quietly in the human delegation section, her hands folded neatly on the polished obsidian table. Around her, beings that had mastered faster-than-light travel millions of years before Earth's first fish crawled onto land debated the fate of her species. The Zephyrians, with their crystalline bodies that chimed like wind bells when they moved, had called this emergency session. Their representative, High Resonator Kawaitichura, stood at the center podium, her form refracting the chamber's ambient light into dancing rainbows. Esteemed council members, Kaichura's voice resonated through universal translators. We must address the human problem immediately. These creatures have been among us for only 3 standard cycles, yet they have already begun to disrupt the natural order. Sarah kept her expression neutral, though her jaw tightened slightly. The human problem had been brewing since Earth received its invitation to join the Galactic Council. Many species viewed humanity with suspicion, fear, or outright disgust. They saw humans as violent, unpredictable, and, worst of all, predatory. The Velcaran delegate, Ambassador Thesui, unfolded his 6 arms in a gesture of agreement. His species resembled oversized praying mantises, but their culture had evolved beyond their carnivorous origins millions of years ago. The humans consumed the flesh of other creatures, he chittered, his mandibles clicking rapidly. They wage war upon their own kind. They destroy their environment for temporary gain. How can such beings be trusted with galactic citizenship? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Aquarians bubbled nervously in their water-filled delegation pods. The photosynthetic collective swayed their branch-like appendages in distress. Even the ancient ethereals, beings of pure energy who rarely involve themselves in physical realm politics, flickered with concern. Sarah had heard these accusations countless times during the integration process. Earth's history was indeed violent by galactic standards. Most council species had evolved from herbivorous or filter-feeding ancestors. They had developed technology and civilization through cooperation and harmony, not competition and conflict. To them, humanity's evolutionary path as persistence hunters was not just alien. It was horrifying. Ambassador Chun came the melodious voice of Archon Veltar, the Council's highest authority. The Archon was a being of such age and wisdom that their original species had transcended physical form eons ago, appearing now as a shifting mass of golden light. You have remained silent during these proceedings. What defense do you offer for your species' nature? Sarah rose slowly, feeling the weight of 10,000 alien gazes upon her. She had prepared for this moment, but preparation and execution were different things. The future of human participation in galactic society hung on her next words. Honored Archon, esteemed delegates, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. I do not come here to deny our nature. Humanity is indeed what you call predatory. We evolved as hunters. We consume meat. We fought wars. These facts are undeniable. The chamber erupted in alarmed chittering, bubbling, and harmonic discord. Sarah raised her hand, and, slowly, the noise subsided. But I ask you to consider this. What you call flaws, we call tools. What you fear is violence. We understand as protection. You speak of our predatory nature as if it were a curse, but you have never seen it used for its true purpose. The Zephyrian High Resonator's crystalline form shifted to an angry red hue. True purpose? What purpose could predation serve among civilized beings? Sarah's lips curved in the faintest suggestion of a smile. Protection of those who cannot protect themselves. Before anyone could respond, the chamber's emergency systems activated. Alarm klaxons wailed as holographic displays materialized throughout the space, showing urgent communications from across the galaxy. The Archon's golden form pulsed rapidly as they processed the incoming data. Impossible, the Archon whispered, their voice barely audible above the chaos. The Void Hunters have returned. A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. The Void Hunters were a nightmare from the galaxy's past, an ancient machine race that had swept through civilized space eons ago, consuming entire star systems before mysteriously vanishing. They were the reason the Council existed, the one threat that had united all peaceful species under one banner. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine, but not from fear, from anticipation. Around her, Council members were panicking, their harmonious nature offering no solutions for this crisis. But humanity had always thrived in chaos. The real test was about to begin. The emergency briefing room adjacent to the main chamber had transformed into a scene of barely controlled panic. Holographic star maps flickered with red warning indicators as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The Void Hunters had struck 17 systems simultaneously, their massive harvest ships appearing without warning and beginning the systematic destruction of everything in their path. Admiral Korvax, the Centaurian military commander, stood before the assembled council members, his usually proud bearing deflated with despair. His species had been the galaxy's primary peacekeeping force for millennia, but their methods relied on negotiation and defensive positioning rather than aggressive tactics. Our preliminary response fleets have been neutralized, Admiral Korvax admitted, his voice heavy with defeat. The Void Hunters' technology has advanced significantly during their absence. Our shields cannot withstand their harvest beams, and our weapons barely scratch their hulls. At current rate of expansion, they will reach the core worlds within 100 standard cycles. The chamber erupted in frightened chatter. Species that had known only peace for millions of years were suddenly faced with extinction. The Aquarians were bubbling so rapidly their translation systems couldn't keep up. The photosynthetic collective had turned a sickly brown color, their leaves wilting with stress. Sarah observed the chaos with professional detachment. She had seen this before, panic in the face of an overwhelming enemy. It was a natural response for species that had never truly faced existential threat. But it was also completely useless. What about the ancient defense protocols? Squeaked Delegate Pipera of the Microsians, her tiny form barely visible on the enlarged speaking platform designed for her species. The planetary fortresses? The stellar barriers? Admiral Korvax's shoulders sagged further. All compromised. The Void Hunters have had eons to study our defenses. They appear to have developed specific countermeasures for every protocol in our database. Then, we evacuate, declared High Resonator Kawaitietra, her crystalline form now cycling rapidly between colors of fear. We abandon the outer systems and consolidate our populations in the core. To what end? Challenged Ambassador Thesioi. Delaying the inevitable. They will simply follow us wherever we go. The debate continued for hours, growing more frantic and less productive with each passing moment. Suggestions ranged from diplomatic contact attempts to mass exodus to other galaxies. None addressed the fundamental problem. The Council had no effective military doctrine because they had never needed one. Sarah finally stood up from her position near the back of the room. I request permission to contact Earth Command. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to her, and she could read the mixture of emotions on their alien faces. Desperation warring with disgust. Hope fighting with horror at what they might be unleashing. Absolutely not, Ambassador Thesioi declared immediately. We will not resort to barbarism, even in desperate times. What exactly do you propose your species could accomplish that our combined fleets cannot? Asked the Archon, their golden form flickering with what might have been curiosity. Sarah stepped forward into the center of the room, her movement causing several delegates to instinctively back away. Honored Archon, you've spent this entire day debating humanity's predatory nature as if it were a disease to be cured. But you've never asked yourselves a simple question. What happens when predators encounter a threat to their pack? She paused, letting the words sink in before continuing. The Void Hunters are not a diplomatic problem. They're not interested in negotiation or coexistence. They are, by definition, an existential threat to every living being in this galaxy, including us. Admiral Korvax shifted uncomfortably. Human military capabilities are limited. Your species has only recently achieved interstellar travel. What could your forces possibly contribute? Admiral, with respect, you're asking the wrong question. You shouldn't be asking what we can contribute. You should be asking what we become when something threatens what we've decided to protect. Sarah activated her personal communicator and displayed Earth's military assessment files on the room's holographic projectors. The assembled delegates stared at the data with growing alarm. Ship designs optimized for destruction rather than exploration. Weapon systems that served no purpose except to eliminate enemies. Military doctrines that assumed violence was not only inevitable, but necessary. This is exactly what we feared, whispered High Resonator Kawaitichara. You've weaponized everything. No, sarari plaid kamli. We've adapted everything. Every human technology, every strategy, every instinct has been shaped by millions of years of survival against impossible odds. We don't fight wars because we enjoy them. We fight them because we're very, very good at ending them. The Archon's form pulsed slowly, processing this information. You are requesting authorization to deploy human military forces against the Void Hunters? I'm requesting authorization to show you what happens when someone threatens our pack, Sarah corrected. 3 days ago, you were debating whether to expel us from the Council because of our nature. Today, that same nature might be the only thing standing between civilization and extinction. The silence stretched for long moments. Finally, Admiral Korvax spoke up. What would you need? Sarah's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. Something that made the nearby delegates take another step back. Complete tactical command authority, unrestricted access to Council military assets, and authorization to deploy any and all human resources as I see fit. That's unprecedented, stammered Delegate Pip-Era. No single species has ever held such authority. Then, I guess it's time for some precedents, Sarah replied. The question isn't whether you trust us. The question is whether you trust us more than you fear the Void Hunters. As if summoned by her words, new alarms began wailing throughout the facility. The holographic displays updated with fresh horror. The Void Hunters had accelerated their timeline. The outer colonies had hours, not days. The choice was no longer theoretical. The authorization came through within the hour, sealed with the Archon's personal quantum signature. Sarah Chun was now Supreme Military Commander of all Council forces, a title that had never existed because it had never been needed. The irony wasn't lost on her that the species most feared by the Council was now their only hope for survival. The command center buzzed with activity as human military advisors materialized through emergency transport beams. Admiral Rebecca Torres arrived first, her scarred face and cybernetic eye testament to humanity's recent conflicts with the hegemony rebels. Behind her came General Marcus Webb, whose reputation for impossible victories had made him a legend even on Earth. Within hours, the sterile diplomatic facility had been transformed into a war room. The alien delegates watched with horrified fascination as humans worked, where council members debated every decision through lengthy consensus building. Humans moved with frightening efficiency. Orders were given and followed without question. Resources were allocated, fleets repositioned, and battle plans formulated at a pace that left the other species struggling to keep up. The Void Hunter advance pattern is predictable, Admiral Torres explained to the assembled council members, her fingers dancing across tactical displays. They're following established hyperspace routes, which means they're treating this like a harvesting operation, not a military campaign. Ambassador Thesui's mandibles clicked nervously. What's the difference? General Webb looked up from his strategic planning, his smile containing no warmth whatsoever. Harvesters expect no resistance. Military campaigns plan for it. High Resonator KYTHRA shifted to a worried orange hue. But surely they must know we will defend ourselves. "Do you?" Sarah asked quietly from her position at the central command console. "Because your defensive protocols assume rational actors who could be negotiated with or deterred. The Void Hunters aren't rational. They're a force of nature. You don't negotiate with a tsunami. You prepare for it, redirect it, or destroy it." The first phase of humanity's counterattack began 12 hours later. Council fleets that had been retreating in disorder suddenly stopped, regrouped, and began moving in coordinated patterns that no alien admiral had ever conceived. The humans had done something unprecedented. They had turned the Council's exploration and research vessels into weapons of war. "This is barbaric," whispered Delegate Pipera as she watched the tactical displays. Civilian transport ships had been retrofitted with kinetic weapons. Science vessels now carried experimental warheads. Even the Aquarian habitat ships had been modified with ramming capabilities. "This is adaptation," Sarah corrected without looking away from the screens. "Every species in this galaxy has capabilities you've never thought to weaponize because you've never needed to. We're simply helping you see the potential you've always had." The first engagement took place at the Kepler Junction, a major hyperspace intersection that the Void Hunters needed to reach the inner colonies. The aliens expected another easy victory like they'd achieved against previous Council fleets. Instead, they found something that shouldn't have existed: organized resistance with teeth. The battle footage streamed live to the command center, and the Council delegates watched in stunned silence as their ships performed maneuvers that defied every principle of galactic naval doctrine. Photosynthetic collective vessels, designed for peaceful research, suddenly unleashed devastating solar flares channeled through their bioluminescent arrays. Centaurian diplomatic cruisers revealed hidden armor plating and deployed weapon systems that had been disguised as communication arrays. But it was the human ships that truly shocked them. The Earth Defense Force vessels moved like living things, weaving between enemy fire with impossible precision. They didn't fight like machines, or even like warriors. They fought like pack hunters. "How are they doing that?" Admiral Korvax demanded, his voice tight with disbelief as he watched a human destroyer somehow survive a direct hit from a Void Hunter harvest beam. "Redundant systems, reactive armor, and complete disregard for safety margins," Admiral Torres replied matter-of-factly. "That ship is probably held together by prayer and determination at this point, but it's still fighting." The human approach to warfare was unlike anything the aliens had ever imagined. Where Council tactics emphasized preservation and minimal casualties, human strategy accepted losses as inevitable and planned around them. Damaged ships didn't retreat. They rammed enemy vessels or overloaded their reactors to create improvised explosives. Pilots whose craft were too damaged to fight effectively would deliberately crash into critical enemy systems. "They're committing suicide," Ambassador Thesui said, his voice hollow with shock. "They're buying time for the rest of the pack," Sarah corrected. "Every Void Hunter ship that has to deal with a kamikaze attack is one that can't target our main force." The tide of the battle began to shift. For the first time in recorded history, a Void Hunter fleet was not just being resisted, it was being hurt. The massive harvest ships that had seemed invulnerable began to show damage. Their perfect formations wavered as human tactics forced them to respond to threats they had never encountered. Then came the moment that would be remembered in galactic history forever. The human flagship, UES Indomitable, broke through the enemy lines and engaged the Void Hunter command vessel in single combat. The alien ship was 3 times larger and armed with technology that predated most civilizations, but Captain Elena Vasquez had studied the Void Hunter data files for hours. She had found their weakness. "All weapons, target their harvest beam generators," she ordered calmly as her ship shuddered under enemy fire. "Full power to forward shields. All personnel, prepare for ramming speed." In the command center, the Council delegates watched in horrified awe as the human ship deliberately flew directly into the path of the harvest beam, the weapon that had destroyed dozens of their vessels with ease. But instead of disintegrating, The Indomitable absorbed the energy into specially modified collection arrays that had been designed based on photosynthetic collective bioenergy research. Then they fired it back. The Void Hunter command vessel, caught completely off guard by having its own weapon turn against it, simply broke. Its ancient armor cracked, its systems overloaded, and for the first time in eons, a harvest ship fell silent and dead in space. The remaining Void Hunter fleet, suddenly leaderless, and facing an enemy unlike any they had encountered in their long existence, did something unprecedented. They retreated. The command center erupted in celebration, but Sarah Chun remained focused on the strategic displays. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. And now the Council was about to learn what humans did with a defeated enemy. Phase 2 begins now, she announced, her voice cutting through the celebration. We follow them home. The pursuit began immediately. While the Council delegates were still processing their first victory against the Void Hunters in galactic history, human forces were already tracking the retreating enemy fleet through hyperspace. The alien members of the Council had expected to consolidate their forces, tend to their wounded, and prepare defensive positions. They had not expected their new human commanders to become even more aggressive after winning. This is madness, High Resonator Kawaii protested, her crystalline form cycling through rapid color changes. We should fortify our positions and prepare for their return, not chase them into unknown territory. Sarah Chun studied the tactical displays with the focused intensity of a predator tracking wounded prey. Respectfully, High Resonator, that's prey thinking. When you wound a dangerous predator, you don't give it time to recover and plan its revenge. You finish it. Admiral Torres was already coordinating with the surviving fleet commanders, most of whom were still learning to think in military terms rather than diplomatic ones. The Void Hunters' retreat pattern indicates they're heading toward the galactic rim, probably to a staging area or main base. If we let them regroup, they'll come back stronger. General Webb highlighted a section of the star map where the Void Hunter signature had vanished. More importantly, they'll come back having learned from this encounter. Right now, we have the advantage of surprise. They don't understand how we think or fight. That advantage disappears the moment they have time to analyze what happened. The philosophical divide between human and alien thinking had never been clearer. The Council species, evolved from peaceful origins, viewed the retreat as an end to hostilities, a return to the natural order where conflicts were resolved through withdrawal and de-escalation. But humans, shaped by millions of years as persistence hunters, understood that a wounded, dangerous animal was even more deadly than a healthy one. You're talking about genocide, Ambassador HFY accused, his mandibles clicking rapidly with agitation. The complete elimination of an entire species. No, Sarah replied calmly. We're talking about survival. The Void Hunters don't negotiate, don't coexist, and don't stop. They're a machine culture built for one purpose: consumption of all other life. They're not a species to be preserved, they're a disease to be cured. The debate might have continued indefinitely, but new data from the pursuing scouts cut through all philosophical arguments. What they found in the outer rim defied imagination. A massive industrial complex spanning multiple star systems, where the Void Hunters have been systematically converting harvested organic matter into new war machines for eons. By the light, whispered Archon Veltar, as the reconnaissance data filled the command center displays. How many civilizations did they consume to build this? The scope was staggering. Entire worlds have been stripped down to their core materials and rebuilt as factory complexes. The organic matter from billions of sentient beings had been processed into the bioneural networks that powered Void Hunter technology. The fossil records of 1,000 extinct civilizations were literally embedded in the walls of their facilities. This is why we can't let them escape, General Webb said quietly. Every species they've encountered for the past million years is in there somewhere, reduced to raw materials for their war machine. This isn't just about protecting current civilizations. It's about justice for all the ones we couldn't save. The human perspective on warfare began to make terrible sense to the alien delegates. This wasn't about conquest or territory. It was about ensuring that no other species would ever face the horror that countless others had already endured. The humans weren't just fighting to win. They were fighting to end the threat permanently. The final assault on the Void Hunter industrial complex was unlike anything in galactic military history. Human strategic doctrine called for total warfare, the complete elimination of the enemy's ability to wage war, not just their immediate forces. Every factory, every shipyard, every processing facility was targeted for destruction. But the humans had learned from their alien allies as well. Instead of simple destruction, they found ways to turn the Void Hunter's own systems against them. Photosynthetic collective bioengineers introduced viral programs that caused the organic components of Void Hunter technology to reject their mechanical interfaces. Zephyrian harmonic specialists found frequencies that could shatter the quantum matrices holding their ships together. Even the Microsians contributed by designing nanoscale sabotage programs that could infiltrate and disable critical systems. The battle lasted for days. The Void Hunters, trapped in their own stronghold, fought with desperate fury. Their ships emerged from hidden bays by the hundreds, their weapons systems pushed beyond safe parameters in a final attempt to preserve their ancient civilization. But they faced something they had never encountered before, a coalition that combined the scientific genius of a peaceful galaxy with the strategic ruthlessness of its newest and most feared member. Human tactical brilliance guided alien technology toward purposes its creators had never imagined, while alien innovation provided solutions to problems that human aggression alone could never have solved. Captain Elena Vasquez, now commanding a mixed fleet of human and alien vessels, led the final push into the heart of the complex. Her ship, the rebuilt Indomitable, had been enhanced with technology from a dozen different species. Aquarian bioshields protected her hull, while Centaurian energy modulators boosted her weapons to unprecedented levels. All vessels, this is Indomitable, she broadcast on an open channel that reached every ship in the fleet. We're not here for conquest or revenge. We're here to make sure this never happens again to anyone, anywhere. The final Void Hunter Command Center was a monument to cosmic horror, a structure built from the processed remains of entire civilizations, its walls inscribed with the death songs of species that had been extinct for millions of years. As human forces breached its defenses, they found something unexpected, the core of Void Hunter consciousness, a vast artificial intelligence that had been directing their expansion for eons. The entity spoke to them in the voices of every species it had consumed, a chorus of the dead that filled the chamber with ghostly harmonies. It tried to negotiate, to bargain, to appeal to their sense of mercy. It offered knowledge, technology, even resurrection of extinct species in exchange for survival. Sarah Chun, standing in the chamber as the coalition forces established control, listened to the desperate pleas with complete emotional detachment. Then, she gave the order that would define humanity's place in galactic history forever. Shut it down. The silence that followed was absolute. For the first time in galactic history, a threat that had haunted civilized space for millions of years was finally, completely, and permanently ended. The real test would be what happened next. The aftermath of the Void Hunter War revealed something that surprised even the humans. They could put away their weapons as quickly as they had drawn them. Within hours of the final victory, human military forces began converting their war fleet back to its original purposes. Weapons systems were dismantled, aggressive modifications were removed, and ships returned to their peaceful owners. The council delegates watched this transformation with the same fascination they had shown during the war itself. Species that had expected humans to become conquerors instead witnessed something unprecedented. Predators who only hunted when the pack was threatened. I don't understand, Ambassador HFY admitted as he watched human engineers carefully removing weapon modifications from his species' diplomatic vessels. You have the power to dominate the entire galaxy. Why are you giving it back? Admiral Torres, overseeing the decommissioning process, looked genuinely puzzled by the question. Because the threat is over. Why would we need military dominance during peacetime? The alien mindset struggled to comprehend this concept. In their experience, power once gained was rarely surrendered voluntarily. But humans operated on different principles. They had evolved as pack hunters, not as conquerors. Their aggression was protective, not acquisitive. Sarah Chun found herself in the strange position of being both the most feared and most trusted being in galactic space. The Council offered her permanent military leadership, vast resources, even entire star systems as rewards for humanity's service. She turned them all down. The galaxy doesn't need a human military commander during peacetime, she explained to the bewildered Archon. It needs diplomats, scientists, explorers, and builders. Those roles belong to species who excel at them. But the galaxy had been permanently changed by what they had witnessed. The Council's understanding of humanity evolved from fear to something more complex, wary respect mixed with protective gratitude. They had seen what humans became when their pack was threatened, and they never wanted to see it again, but they were profoundly grateful it existed when needed. The memorial constructed at the site of the final battle became a testament to this new understanding. Built from the salvaged remains of the Void Hunter complex, it honored not just the species that had fallen to the ancient threat, but the uncomfortable truth about survival that the galaxy had learned. The inscription, written in every known galactic language, was simple. Sometimes the predator protects the pack. 6 months after the war's end, the Galactic Council reconvened to address the original question that had sparked the crisis: humanity's place in galactic society. But the debate that had once centered on fear and revulsion now took on an entirely different character. High Resonator Kythra, her crystalline form, now a calm blue, spoke first. We spent so much time fearing humanity's nature that we never asked what that nature truly served. Now we know. The photosynthetic collective's representative swayed gently as photosynthetic patterns played across their bark-like skin. Our species have spent eons developing technologies of creation, growth, and harmony. But we never developed technologies of protection. Humans showed us that creation means nothing without the willingness to defend it. Even Ambassador HFY, humanity's most vocal critic, had found a new perspective. I still find human methods disturbing, he admitted. But I find the results undeniable. When the galaxy faced extinction, only one species had the tools needed to prevent it. The debate continued for days, but its outcome was never in doubt. The motion to grant humanity full council membership passed unanimously, but with a unique provision that had never been included in any previous membership agreement. The Human Defense Compact, as it came to be known, formally recognized humanity's role as the galaxy's protectors. In exchange for full citizenship rights and integration into galactic society, humanity agreed to maintain specialized military capabilities that would remain dormant during peaceful times but could be activated if existential threats ever arose again. Sarah Chun, now appointed as the first human ambassador to the Galactic Council, found the irony both bitter and sweet. Humanity had finally achieved the acceptance they had sought, but only after proving they could be the galaxy's most efficient killers. Do you think they'll ever truly trust us? Admiral Torres asked during the celebration ceremony, as representatives from across the galaxy gathered to welcome humanity into full membership. Sarah watched a group of Microsian children playing with human marines, their tiny forms climbing over soldiers who could accidentally step on them without noticing. The Marines moved with exaggerated care, their battlefield reflexes adapted to protect beings smaller than insects. They don't need to trust us, Sarah replied thoughtfully. They need to trust that we'll protect them. There's a difference. General Webb approached them, his usual stern expression softened by something that might have been relief. Final casualty reports are in. We lost 12% of our forces during the campaign. The numbers hit Sarah harder than she expected. Thousands of human lives lost, families destroyed, futures ended. The price of being the galaxy's protector was always paid in human blood. Was it worth it? Torres asked quietly. Sarah looked out at the celebration, at species who could now sleep peacefully knowing that the Void Hunter threat was permanently ended. At children who would grow up in a galaxy where ancient nightmares were just stories. At civilizations that could focus on growth and discovery instead of survival. Ask me in 100 years, she said, when these children have children and they've never had to learn what we learned. When a galaxy has had time to grow without fear. When peace isn't just the absence of war, but the presence of hope. The celebration continued around them, but Sarah's mind was already turning toward the future. Humanity had proven they could fight when fighting was needed, but now came the harder challenge, proving they could build when building was needed. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's predator unleash. Now it was time to show them what humans did when the hunt was over. The real work was just beginning. The Galactic Council chamber hummed with the soft vibrations of 1,000 different species breathing, clicking, and whispering in their native tongues. Ambassador Sarah Chun sat quietly in the human delegation section, her hands folded neatly on the polished obsidian table. Around her, beings that had mastered faster than light travel millions of years before Earth's first fish crawled onto land debated the fate of her species. The Zephyrians, with their crystalline bodies that chimed like wind bells when they moved, had called this emergency session. Their representative, High Resonator Kawaitichura, stood at the center podium, her form refracting the chamber's ambient light into dancing rainbows. Esteemed council members, Kaichira's voice resonated through universal translators. We must address the human problem immediately. These creatures have been among us for only 3 standard cycles, yet they have already begun to disrupt the natural order. Sarah kept her expression neutral, though her jaw tightened slightly. The human problem had been brewing since Earth received its invitation to join the Galactic Council. Many species viewed humanity with suspicion, fear, or outright disgust. They saw humans as violent, unpredictable, and worst of all, predatory. The Vulcaran delegate, Ambassador Thesui, unfolded his 6 arms in a gesture of agreement. His species resembled oversized praying mantises, but their culture had evolved beyond their carnivorous origins millions of years ago. The humans consumed the flesh of other creatures, he chittered, his mandibles clicking rapidly. They wage war upon their own kind. They destroy their environment for temporary gain. How can such beings be trusted with galactic citizenship? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Aquarians bubbled nervously in their water-filled delegation pods. The photosynthetic collective swayed, their branch-like appendages in distress. Even the ancient ethereals, beings of pure energy who rarely involve themselves in physical realm politics, flickered with concern. Sarah had heard these accusations countless times during the integration process. Earth's history was indeed violent by galactic standards. Most council species had evolved from herbivorous or filter-feeding ancestors. They had developed technology and civilization through cooperation and harmony, not competition and conflict. To them, humanity's evolutionary path as persistence hunters was not just alien. It was horrifying. Ambassador Chun came the melodious voice of Archon Veltar, the Council's highest authority. The Archon was a being of such age and wisdom that their original species had transcended physical form eons ago, appearing now as a shifting mass of golden light. You have remained silent during these proceedings. What defense do you offer for your species' nature? Sarah rose slowly, feeling the weight of 10,000 alien gazes upon her. She had prepared for this moment, but preparation and execution were different things. The future of human participation in galactic society hung on her next words. Honored Archon, esteemed delegates, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. I do not come here to deny our nature. Humanity is indeed what you call predatory. We evolved as hunters. We consumed meat. We fought wars. These facts are undeniable. The chamber erupted in alarmed chittering, bubbling, and harmonic discord. Sarah raised her hand, and slowly the noise subsided. But I ask you to consider this. What you call flaws, we call tools. What you fear as violence, we understand as protection. You speak of our predatory nature as if it were a curse, but you have never seen it used for its true purpose. The Zephyrian High Resonator's crystalline form shifted to an angry red hue. True purpose? What purpose could predation serve among civilized beings? Sarah's lips curved in the faintest suggestion of a smile. Protection of those who cannot protect themselves. Before anyone could respond, the chamber's emergency systems activated. Alarm klaxons wailed as holographic displays materialized throughout the space, showing urgent communications from across the galaxy. The Archon's golden form pulsed rapidly as they processed the incoming data. "Impossible," the Archon whispered, their voice barely audible above the chaos. "The Void Hunters have returned." A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. The Void Hunters were a nightmare from the galaxy's past, an ancient machine race that had swept through civilized space eons ago, consuming entire star systems before mysteriously vanishing. They were the reason the Council existed, the one threat that had united all peaceful species under one banner. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine, but not from fear, from anticipation. Around her, Council members were panicking, their harmonious nature offering no solutions for this crisis. But humanity had always thrived in chaos. The real test was about to begin.